Hey, welcome to the Handy Hudsonite. Today we're going to look at how to change oil in a 2004 Odyssey, but don't skip over the video because these principles will be applicable to most cars. You just have to look up the specs in your owner's manual or online. The process is simple. I want to break it down for you as far as what you'll need and the steps to do it so that you can get the job done. Okay, so these are the tools and materials that we'll be needing today. We are going to be needing, obviously, the oil filter, which is important to change every time. We have the engine oil. Now, like I mentioned, this is a 2004 Honda Odyssey, so we are going to be using 5W20. Now, this talks about just the viscosity of the oil. Hondas, especially the Odysseys, the Pilots, they require the 20 grade motor oil, but other cars will require 5W30, maybe even 5W40, or even the 10W series of oil. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to go into all those specs for you. So I choose Mobile 1. This is full synthetic engine oil, and I like using this because it means you don't have to change your oil quite as often. I generally go 3 to 6 months when I use the synthetic. If you're using the regular grade oil, you want to change your oil at least every 3 months because it is going to break down much faster than the synthetic if you're using the organic. So but for this, 3 to 6 months is good. So obviously we need that. In order to get the filter off, these are my favorite tools. This one I bought at Sears, but Sears is no more. So but you can probably buy this online or in other stores. There's a cheaper version of this, but I found that it actually is harder to use, it slips, and it can break. You can also get one that will work with your ratchet wrench, and this is a socket fitting. It'll go right over the filter, and this is a nice way to get it off. If you don't want to get this tool, you can pick this up at any hardware store or online. Now for the Hondas, you will need to replace this washer. It's a crush washer, so you should replace it every time you change the oil. They're very cheap, even at the dealership, or you can order them on Amazon. I like to use gloves. These gloves that I have on, Harbor Freight sells these for cheap. The 5 mil is plenty good for doing oil changes. Absorbent towels, you can actually get a whole lot of these at Costco for cheap, and they last you a long time. And I have an old oil bottle here. This is what you're going to want to dispose the oil in, and then you can take this oil to any hardware store that will recycle this. O'Reilly's will recycle it for free in my area, but you want to check to see where you can have that recycled. Please don't pour this down the sink or in your yard or whatnot. And then you're going to need some sort of a container that's large enough for the oil change. Now for the 2004 Odyssey, it's going to require about 5 quarts is going to come out, because that's the amount that we're going to be replacing in the car is 5 quarts. This box here, again, bought at Costco. Great deals there. This is actually comes with 6, so this would be more than enough, and enough to fill up when I need it. If you have a car that leaks a little bit, synthetic can tend to speed up your leak just because it's more viscous, so it's going to seep out of those areas where your gaskets or your seals are worn out. There is actually a great product that can tend to help tighten up some of those seals. It won't work for everything, but I can put a link in the description to that. So In order to get the oil plug off of your oil pan, you're going to need a socket, and this is a 17 millimeter socket here, socket wrench. And then when you reattach it, a lot of people don't use a torque wrench, but I like to, just to make sure I'm getting it back to spec. And on this 2004 Honda Odyssey, I believe it's similar for the Honda Pilots, it's 29 foot-pounds, and so that's what I'll be tightening it to when I reattach the oil drain plug. What we have here is we need to get access to the oil pan drain plug. Now, in most cases, you do not have to remove your front passenger side wheel, but for the sake of filming, I did. And I also need to rotate my tires, so had to get it off anyway. So this is what it looks like. You take the wheel off. Here's your filter right here, your oil filter. Okay, so we're under the car here, and this is your oil drain plug. Over here you have part of the frame, and the over here you've got the wishbone and the tire, the passenger tire this direction. So that's my orientation. Over here is the front of the car. So this is what we're going to loosen. It takes a 17 millimeter socket to get this bolt, this oil drain plug off. The filter is up here. You can't see it in this shot. So this is where we're working. So we're just gonna loosen this, put a drain pan underneath here, and get this oil out. And one more tip is you want to make sure to, if the engine has been sitting for a while, you want to make sure to run it for a couple of minutes. The oil will just come out faster. It will be a pain if, especially in the winter, if you don't run the car before you change the oil. It'll come out much slower. Though the synthetic oil will come out faster anyway, but you still want to warm up the engine to speed up the process. And but make sure the engine isn't too hot. If it is, you might need to let it sit for a while. If you've been driving around town or on a trip, you definitely don't want to change the oil right away, but let it sit maybe for an hour before you attempt it. You don't want to get burned when you get the oil coming out. So anyway, I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so we're ready to remove the oil drain plug here. So we'll just get our 17 millimeter socket here. And make sure this is on the loosening part of things. There we go. It's on pretty tight. So we'll just loosen this up. I'm going to make sure to have some paper towels nearby, as this will get messy. For some reason, the angle that Honda made for their oil drain plugs is kind of odd, or at least from coming at this side of the car. Okay, it's going to be coming out, so you're ready for the stream of oil here. 6 months worth of oil. Very long drain plug. Okay, here we go. And you see the oil coming out. I will, my trusty paper towel here, and be careful not to drop your drain plug into the reservoir here, as they're hard to fish out, or at least a mess. and definitely not forgetting that it's in there. And one of the easy things to do is to forget to put your drain plug on when you go to add more oil. So we're going to let this drain out for a couple minutes. As you can see, it's draining nice and fast. I warmed up the engine for a couple of minutes earlier just so that it would drain out faster. So this is definitely not something that you want to be drinking, and be careful with small kids or animals around here. Make sure not to leave the reservoir out where kids or animals can access it, but get it put away right away. So once this drains out, actually my reservoir's large enough. Let me move this that I can access the filter as well. I don't know if you can actually see the filter up here. A little bit, I guess. I'm going to turn the filter, and usually you can get this off. I have a pretty good angle on this, especially since I took the wheel off, to get this off by hand. If I do have trouble by hand, I've got my socket, and it looks like it's going to come off pretty easy by hand. And now that is draining a little bit slower over there, I'm going to take this off, and it will drip. And kind of the hassle with the Odysseys here is you have this, you've got part of the frame here that it leaks all over, and it's a bit of a chore to get it cleaned up. So I'm just twisting it off, and it's about ready to come all the way off. I'll get this down. Once this comes all the way off, there we go, and just dump the rest of it into the reservoir. Again, being careful not to drop the filter in there. So I'm going to put the filter on, and what you want to do is you want to add a layer of oil. Just rub some oil around the seal on the top. That'll help it from seizing up on there. The other thing that I do, and I just spilled a little bit, I fill this about halfway with oil, because this is kind of a straight up shot, so it's not going to leak out when I go to put it back on. But you just twist it here, twist it clockwise to tighten it, and you want to snug it up and get it hand tight. Let me get my... In fact, you'll notice I haven't really used any of my tools for this. So you want to get it hand tight, and then you want to turn it about a quarter of a turn past the point where it's snug, and that's good. You don't want to get that on too tight, or the next time when you go to take it off, it could be a real pain to do it. Okay, I've got my oil plug here, my drain plug, and I put the new washer on. As you can see, it just slips right on. So now I'm gonna just hand tighten this in here, and it goes in just horizontally. A lot of drain plugs go in at an angle. Okay, I got my torque wrench. I have this set to you know what, I actually set it to 39 foot-pounds. Fail. I need to set it to 29 foot-pounds. This would have been way too tight, and I could have done some damage to it. Okay, I'm back here. Got the right torque. Now, move that out of the way. Yeah. And tighten this again to 29 foot-pounds. There, you got the click. So we're good on that. So now we got the filter back in, the drain plug. So now all we got to do is put more oil in the car. Okay, so I have opened up the hood here, and this is the Honda engine. Honda engines have these plastic covers over it, making the engine look very clean for the most part. The oil access is right here in the front, and you'll see the 5W20 written right on the cap. So I've taken the cap off. Make sure to place the cap somewhere where you're not going to lose it. I have had the cap fall down into the engine, and that was kind of a pain to pull out. And I should have mentioned that you probably will need a funnel of some sort. Didn't have that in the supplies at the beginning, so apologize about that. I like to use this funnel even though it doesn't go all the way down. It sits here nice so that I can pour in the oil. So we'll come over here, and I actually have some leftover oil from the last time. So we will take this off and take note of how much oil is in. There's usually an indicator on the side. Looks like there's about 2 quarts in here. And again, the capacity of the this particular Honda Odyssey, the 2004, is almost just under 5 quarts. I should note that I have my Odyssey up on jack stands because I will be rotating the tires. Now normally for an oil change you will not be putting it up on 4 jack stands. You might be putting it up on 2 in the front. If that's the case, you will want to lower the vehicle once you fill the oil. It's because when you go to check the oil, if you've not lowered it back down, you're going to get an inaccurate oil reading. So we've poured in 4 quarts. Now that's less than what we need, but you want to be careful not to overfill. You can always take the drain plug off and drain out excess, but it's kind of a waste. So it's best to put in, I like to put in 4 quarts and then start measuring with the dipstick to see how much exactly I'm going to need, and that helps me to not overfill. I should say also, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is when you're going to drain the oil, it helps to take off the oil fill cap. It'll allow air into the system to drain it out more, which I did not do. Probably in the sake of filming the video, I got distracted and didn't do that. So there might be a little bit of leftover old oil in there, which is fine for now, but don't want to make a habit of doing that every time. So I'm going to measure out, check the dipstick. Now the dipsticks, and it can be different on different vehicles, but because the oil pan is on the passenger side, and for some reason Honda likes to color their oil dipsticks orange, which threw me off when I first got this car because I thought it was this one, this yellow one. That's actually the transmission dipstick over by the battery. And I did a battery testing video. I'll put the link up here so that you can watch that on how to test your battery if you're having starting issues, if maybe there's just intermittent problems with the engine. A lot of times it can be related to the battery, not always, but sometimes. So this is an Autocraft battery I put in from Advanced Auto Parts. Thank you to them. Put this in just a couple weeks ago, and it's running great. And so be sure to watch that video on how to test your battery. So all you have to do is pull this out and wipe it off. You notice there are 2 holes there, and the fill should be between these 2 holes. You might want to get it closer to the upper hole when it's all said and done, just to make sure you have enough oil. So just put this back in. You want to clean it off and put it back in so you get an accurate reading. It actually looks like, it's interesting. It actually looks like we're up at the mark already. We're going to start up the car and then we'll check the oil again. And probably let the car run for just a minute or so and let the oil get through the system, and just to get it flowing through there. Typically 2 minutes is plenty of time to be doing this, but generally a minute is plenty for getting the oil circulated. And then you want to wait a few seconds, ideally about a minute, and then we'll check the level to see if it's going to need more. Oil level here, the dipstick. And again, we want to wipe it off, because when the engine's been running, it can slosh that oil around and thus give you an inaccurate reading. Okay, yeah. So you can see we are between the marks there exactly. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit more in, not much. Yeah, we're really close. So I'm just going to add just a few more milliliters, and we'll call it good. So that is how you do an oil change. I wanted to show you the difference in my oil. It's amazing. This obviously is the oil that I just drained out of my car. This is the new oil that I put in. And you can see why it's so crucial to change your oil on a regular basis. You don't want this stuff running around in your engine for long periods of time. It would just be so abrasive in wearing out your all your different fittings, your gaskets, your seals. You want to make sure to get good clean oil in your car on a regular basis. So thought you would like to see the before and after with that. It's a drastic difference. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. This is the part that I dread, the cleanup. You gotta put away everything that I got out. The jack, all the tools, the materials.